welcome back to Inspirational Cafe. I'm your girl Rochelle. Here I uplift, encourage, and inspire. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, and please subscribe. Let's dig in. Today, let's talk about life lessons versus failure. We judge anything incomplete or unfinished as failure. We procrastinate and we simply stop fulfilling what it is that we know God has called us to do. We get stagnated. We allow the enemy to speak to us. We procrastinate and we allow that spirit to get all over us. We allow it to get in our minds and to stop us from fulfilling our God's-given purpose. Many of us know procrastination has caused us to stop fulfilling what God told us years ago to do. We know procrastination, it will set in our spirit and then it overtakes our mind. And then we look at unsuccess, or we look at incomplete or unfinished as failure, when it's simply not failure. We have to pick up the pieces, start over. It doesn't matter how far you got in the project or how incomplete you think it is. We have to simply pick up the pieces and start over. Any incomplete assignment, unfinished task, delayed dream is not failure in God's eyes, because we still can be used to complete the assignment, to finish the task, to move forward in our dreams. But it's up to us. We simply have to stop looking at incomplete or unfinished as failure. We have to move forward, start over. There's only failure when we don't try, when we don't give it our all in all, when we don't give it our best shot. Failure is simply not starting. If you never start, how can you know that you will achieve or that you will be successful? We have to simply start. And if that means starting over, then okay. Pick up the pieces, start over again, because it's only life lessons. God is only showing us we've missed the mark. Somewhere we went wrong. And often it's because we didn't consult God before even starting the process. We have to consult God. We have to believe in Him and trust in Him and believe what He told us. If He told us to go out and to do a thing, then He'll give us the tools that we need to complete them. But there is no failure in incomplete. That simply means you didn't complete it, but that doesn't mean that you have failed in it. We have to start over, refresh, and start again. That failed business plan, that application that you didn't fill out, it doesn't mean that you were failed. It means that you simply didn't follow through the process. It's only life lessons. And more often than not, if we go back to those plans, if we go back to those incompletes, we'll see where we missed the mark, where we went wrong, where we didn't finish because we didn't follow through and consult God with our plans, with what He told us to do. We have to go through those steps. Pray and ask God to lead and direct us, to order us. And more often than not, if it doesn't happen in our timing, we label that as failure. How many of you know it's not in your time? It's always in God's time. It doesn't matter what we do. how far we go, how successful we are. It's always in God's time. We have to stop believing that just because it doesn't happen when we want it to happen, we failed. That's a lie from the pits of hell. We have to trust and believe God in his time, because his time is always the best time. How many of you know, yeah, we've watched people succeed only to fail later because they didn't follow God's plan. They got out and they did it their way. But how many of you know we have to do it God's way? It has to be done God's way. That means we have to consult him even before we go out. We have to do it God's way because our way is not working. So we have to go back and start over. But it doesn't mean that we failed. It's simply a lesson. They're simply lessons from God. Yes, we may have to start over. Yes, we may have to pull up our sleeves and repeat the process. But that doesn't make us failures. It's only lessons that we can take from this particular project and move it into the next. It doesn't mean we failed. That's a lie. That's a lie from the pits of hell. There's no failure in God's eyes as long as we're trying. As long as we're trying and giving it our best shot, there is no failure in God's eyes. A delayed dream, an incomplete assignment, an unfinished project, that's not failure. It's only a lesson. And we can learn from all of those incompletes, all of those unfinished projects, even a delayed dream. It's delayed, but it doesn't mean that it's failed. We have to simply stop believing we're incomplete in doing a thing that we failed. No, if you go back and you go back to see where you went wrong and ask God, where did I go wrong in this? How do I fix this? God will give us the answers. And if that means starting over, we simply have to start over. But we have to stop labeling incomplete, unfinished as failure. Because even if we have to start over, we're starting over to complete. We're starting over to finish. We're starting over to push ourselves into greater, into who God has called us to be. But we simply have to stop using the word failure. I failed at this. No, you haven't completed. You haven't finished what you started, but you're not a failure. I like to reference this. There are many references I can use in the Bible, but I would like to use the book of Ruth. When Naomi, her husband had passed away, her 2 sons passed away, she thought God had taken his hand off of her. She thought the hand of God wasn't upon her anymore because her husband had died, her 2 sons had died, and surely she believed she would never get married again. She would never have any more children. But how many of us know that it's not always our plans? God always has a ram in the bush for all of us. Just because it doesn't go the way we feel it should go, we look at it as failure. But it's not. And it's always in God's time. So the story goes on that Naomi had a daughter-in-law by the name of Ruth. And Ruth loved Naomi. She said, where you go, I go. She was loyal. What you do, I'll do. So then Ruth went along with Naomi. And Naomi told Ruth that on her husband's side, she had a relative. And Ruth ended up marrying a man by the name of Boaz. They married and they had a child together. And when that child was born, that child was just like a son to Naomi, one of the sons that she lost. I want to read this scripture to you so that I can clarify through the scripture. Ruth 4:13-17. It says, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. Naomi never thought that she would even have another kinsman, because her sons had passed, her husband had passed, but through Ruth, someone she never thought that she would be able to have another child, just like another child to her. Her daughter-in-law graced her with the gift that she never thought she would have again in life. See, it's not always the way we want it, but it's how God uses the situation. And there, she thought she was failed. She thought God had taken his hand off of her. She thought that her life would never be joyous. It would never be happy again because she didn't have a kinsman. She didn't have anyone close to her like a son anymore. She didn't have her husband. Yes, she had Ruth, her daughter-in-law, but she felt like she would never have no one like a child again. But God graced her and found favor through her daughter-in-law, Ruth, that gave her a child. It was just like her own. He graced her. God graced Ruth with the child, her and Boaz with the child, to bless Naomi in the end. So I want to encourage someone. It's not all, God doesn't always do it the way you want it done, where you may think is failure in your eyes, but it's just a life lesson. It's just a lesson. It's just a lesson. And we have to take those lessons and move forward with them. Believe that just because you don't see success right now, that doesn't mean that success isn't on the way. That doesn't mean that God isn't answering your prayers. It doesn't mean that God has forgotten about you. And more importantly, it doesn't mean that it's failure. It's simply a life lesson. It's just lessons. And we have to trust God. We have to take him at his word and believe him. I want to encourage you to not always believe. Don't place that in your spirit. Anything that's incomplete or anything that's unfinished is failure. Because God always has a ram in the bush. And he doesn't do it the way we think it should be done. He does it to get the glory, So we have to trust and believe God and take him at his word. I want to encourage you. Failure is just simply not trying. But when you're giving it your best, your all in all, giving it your best shot, you can succeed even after starting over again. Just trust and believe God. It's simply not failure, but only life lessons. As always, I'm Rochelle. This is Inspirational Cafe. Until next time, be blessed.